Okay, you're on the air.
Yay!
So, hey everybody. Thanks for being patient with us. We have so many things going on with Data 360, and we have some new friends joining us. And this is Sarah, who we're putting on the spot today. And she's going to help us with the Women's Initiative for Data 360 Labs and the Data 360 Labs customers. And we're just going to have a little chat. We owe you guys a recording for Mastering the Market. So we're just going to talk a little bit here with Sarah. And she's going to talk through a little bit about her experiences with what we've learned about helping out entrepreneurs with tech. I think it'll be insightful for you guys. I hope you guys enjoy it. So, Sarah, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you've been up to?
Sure. So, really happy to be here. So happy to have been introduced to Data 360 and hope I have some good things to share with you all. But I am a consultant, I'm a growth strategist, is primarily what I do. So, I help people scale their great ideas. People who just have an idea and need to figure out how to make it into some form of reality, all the way into people who've already developed companies and have a team and are really trying to grow and expand. So I'm sort of a Renaissance woman and an entrepreneur myself, and have had a hand in really all aspects of business, from visioning and ideation all the way into business development and sales and partnerships development. And I'm really excited to be involved with Data 360 because I think there's just vast potential for great ideas to be scaled using technology. From bootstrap to funded organizations. I think everyone will benefit. So I'm excited to explore that. And yeah, I've had a lot of diverse experiences in a lot of different industries. And I just love, advising organizations and helping them to achieve their goals, and even just kind of pull out, what their central vision is, and explore all the different ways to how to get it out there to their target audiences and also new prospective audiences, and just come up with creative, agile, innovative techniques to help them do that. So that's what I do. I'm also an artist, and I've had a very varied background all over the map, but I found startups and business and entrepreneurship to be the most exciting, invigorating place to be, because just literally everything is happening at once. Ideas develop so quickly. Partnerships and relationships lead to these interconnected, spaces in the world where people in one industry can connect with another and help each other. So that's where I'm most interested in existing. And yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Yay, thanks so much. One of the things we like to talk about is kind of like all of this new stuff that's happening out in the market. And, um, how do you explain to entrepreneurs like what the heck is going on in startups? You're in the heart of it. You just made it over to San Francisco from New York. So how do you tell people like they're trying to do stuff? Like what do you tell them? What is the world about right now?
Wow, great question. I mean, depending on their needs and problems, I'm usually sort of an ambassador to potentialities and possibilities. So oftentimes experts or somebody even just somebody who has an idea wants to create a business out of it, but they don't know how to do it, or what are the tools that exist. There's a lot of blind spots, and there's a lot to do. When you're an entrepreneur, you have to literally do everything. You can't just do that little thing that you set out to do, like, oh, I want to sell cupcakes, that's my business. You don't end up just selling cupcakes. You have to do literally everything else. So I'm usually introducing people to ideas and technologies, sometimes software applications that can help them to just do it faster, because very little can be done just like writing out a document anymore. You really need to have access to these amazing tools that are out there, that can help you generate customers, that can help you generate customer feedback, for example, CRM technology. And I think just most entrepreneurs don't have access and aren't aware of most of those services and technologies. So I try to, if I don't know about it, honestly, I do my research and I introduce it into a palatable way, and we just take steps to, try to help them implement those technological solutions that'll just get them somewhere much faster than if they were just trying to, invent it analog style.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that encapsulates a lot of what we wind up doing Data 360 Labs is just kind of like helping you get the place where you're going. So what I'm doing is turning on the screen to talk a little bit about let's kind of walk people through kind of the I would say the history of the internet, but let's say web 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, right? Tell me a little bit about like how you explain to people this evolution of 1, 2, and 3.
Sure. So it happens differently according to the client or who I'm dealing with, because everyone has a different level of understanding. Varies across
Yeah.
regions and generations and like the age of
Yeah,
the
some
company.
people are back at 1, right?
Yeah, I mean, I work with one nonprofit, and their website is I couldn't believe a website like that still existed, and I wanted to help them grow, and so my first step was like, nobody's going to donate money on this website. It's really hard to find the donate button. It's like there's so much information I can't even get to where I need to go. And your number one concern is that people donate money. So that's a 1.0 example, classic, where somebody builds a website for a different reason than what they actually need, which is usually to generate, income or expand their audience, or sometimes it can be just to provide information, but that's, I think, pretty rare these days. And I think a lot of people, I think, are in 2.0, where they understand the basic tenets of like the cloud and social media. I work with a lot of people trying to help them generate like editorial calendars for social media and just get their social media strategy organized and introduce them to concepts that around ads and forms and funnels for their website. So a lot of people I work with, especially, like entrepreneurs from their 20s to their 40s, are kind of already in that, but are still a little bit intimidated. I think that's probably where the vast majority of web users are right now. And then, of course, Marina is all about Web 3.0, where everything is in the cloud, things are user generated, content is everything. And, those people have a real foot ahead of the game. They know that everything that they're putting on the internet is helping them generate SEO. And like Gen Z, they already know, like, you create your brand from age 15, and from there you can get a job or do what you want. And that's like the Web 3.0 is just so versatile and open. It's changing every day, which I think is
Right.
scary for a lot of people.
Yeah,
But
and so much business is being generated on like Instagram and Snapchat. I literally was on the phone with 3 picture entrepreneurs, so I call the picture entrepreneurs, that Snapchat, 1 Snapchat and 2 Instagrams.
mhm.
And they generated all their income from those channels. And
Right.
they had no other marketing or salespeople or nothing. And I was like, oh, it's so funny for me as like a corporate person. I'm just like, okay, what are we putting on our Instagram, right? We reach 1.5 million people directly,
Mhm.
and billions of people indirectly, and I'm like, Instagram, I don't, empty. I don't have it. I don't know what to, what else do we put out there? And I
Yeah.
kind of know like there are other things to put out there, but yeah, it's so interesting, right? And like you don't have to everybody has their own little corner of the internet which services millions and millions of people.
Yep. Yep. Totally. And you have your tribe, and you can build this whole community of people. And if you start to get into it, you just learn more and more and devour more and more, and you can be really successful at it. And but it's you have to start. There's a lot of resistance to going in there, and I totally understand. It can be a time suck, but it can get you whatever you want if you
Yeah.
dive.
You have to get in there though to get what you want. I think I don't even know if it's an option anymore.
I don't think it is. And what's so great about Data 360, I think, is there's a community focus there because these tools are going to be ubiquitous, and the organizations that are doing the most good in the world should have access to that, so we can scale the greatest ideas, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the idea of I the whole notion of what can be great has changed so drastically, and it's not really governed by the usual suspects anymore. Where it really was in 1.0 and 2.0, there's so many other aspects here that I think are just so fascinating in terms of developing markets and saying what is a market and how markets should be and
Mm,
what should be invested in and what, how things are supposed to go. Right. And I think that's what everybody's really sensing that. And we're seeing it unfold in so many different ways on every level.
mhm.
That the whole definition of how we live on Earth is changed, and it's mostly because of technology, because of social media. I mean, now when you got world leaders tweeting at each other, I
Yep.
think that's different. And it's
Yeah,
like changing policy. And like Elon Musk got fined by the
right.
SEC because of a tweet.
Right.
The market went up and down because of tweets this week,
Hmm.
from President Trump.
Yeah.
so
People are being
I think
impacted.
people don't think about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, to me it's like it's so fascinating. I don't think I'll ever stop studying it. Okay. So next subject, let's talk about data. Now, tell me what your like on the ground experience and understanding of like business intelligence and data science. Now, these are very corporate topics, but what does it look like from your perspective as a growth hacker with small businesses and with startups and with people growing new initiatives? Like, what does all this mean to people? Does this mean anything to people, or is it like totally Greek?
I mean, I honestly think for the most part, it's totally Greek. I think people are just beginning to understand the business intelligence side where oh, wow, we gathered all of this information about last year's trends and we put it into a package and we're presenting it. Or maybe it's last month's, but it really is typically, I think, looking backwards and, seeing what the trends are and then finding that to be revelatory. I mean, in my experience, that's where most people are. And the data scientists, I think, on the right side are in such high demand, and I think a lot of people just don't even know what the potential is there. I think a lot of people see data science as that first half of the business intelligence. So that's just my experience. Um,
Right. Right. I don't think they know at all. I mean, that's, really why we start dedicating a lot of resources to labs to just kind of to get to the point where, small businesses even have a chance to be on the same
right.
level
Yeah,
as a corporation regarding these subjects.
right. I mean, it's just such a high leap to take. Like often I'll just be helping people set up a basic spreadsheet, in Excel or Sheets to help them gather information about their customers or, set up some metrics so that
Hmm.
they can at least analyze certain aspects of their business. And to a lot of people, small business and entrepreneurs and startups, like that's last priority for them. They don't understand it. They don't know that it could like literally help skyrocket their business. And I just think it's
Yeah,
it's
they
great.
don't know. I mean, that's these steps, right? See this like build the data, right? That's the spreadsheet. It's funny because we had this conversation with Microsoft this week about how do we help people understand more about AI. And I was like, we have to help them. The funniest thing, it starts with Excel.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And we're like, well, you know what? We're going to start teaching people about Excel and
Hmm.
in 3D modeling. And oddly enough, there's some 3D in PowerPoint. So we're like, it's Excel and PowerPoint.
Hmm.
But the funniest thing is that hadn't even occurred to Microsoft
Oh, really?
as
Yeah.
a growth
How
path.
do we do
And
it?
let me tell you why. Because they're not AI people in the sense of the people, the practitioners we were talking to. They have AI people, but the AI people don't talk to the customers.
Right, they're siloed.
They're silent. So it was so interesting. I found that so fascinating
Mm.
because I was like, oh, because I talk to customers all the time and I also do data, I can say, oh, yeah, let's just teach them Excel.
Right. Right.
So it's so interesting how many different things, I think that's, part of the reason why Day 360 is in that unique position too, because our CEO was brave enough to let me be an equal
Mm,
at the conversation as a tech person. I'm not like behind the scenes. I'm like up front with the rest of everybody else. And
right.
so, it's interesting because most engineers don't have presentation skills or business skills or ways to teach people. I think it's also about being a woman engineer.
Mm,
And so there's a lot I think, people can understand about like how simple this really is. This looks so intimidating to a lot of people. But this is really like if you can handle Excel, you can do all of this. We promise you. Right? But it just takes a minute to kind of like wrap your head around it.
right.
And
Right.
like so when you get them into their spreadsheet and metrics, like is there a resistance? Like is there like, oh my God, do I really have to do that? And like how do you get people over the hump?
Always. There's always resistance, for sure. I think because I mean, I think it's like fundamentally also a conceptual resistance because most people, I mean, there are definitely lots of scientist entrepreneurs, but most people have an idea and they think it's a great idea and they think they can sell it. You know, maybe they've talked to their friends and family and they're like, yes, this is an awesome idea. I don't think it exists, or if it does, I'm going to do it better. But they're not so open to leaving their idea open, you know. And I think this like real data science is all about leaving it open so that you can really get like real life feedback that informs your concept. So I would say that the first resistance is there, where people are like, why do I need to do any analysis on this? You know, it's solid, like it's gonna sell, like we're gonna put it out there, people need it, you know, because we have it, we have something that's important and people are gonna buy it. So that's the first hurdle. And then the second hurdle is, yeah, like a lot of people have used Excel before, but only in a specific way. So I mean, what I do is usually just because I'm a consultant, right? So I don't always help people get in the weeds with it, but I just tell them to, there's so much information available on the internet, you know, and all these platforms have so many tutorials. Like Airtable is a really fun, you know, Excel like collaborative spreadsheet tool that I usually tell people to use. And they have tons of videos and tutorials that can help you, you know, get in with it. And I usually try to find the person on the team, if it's more than a one person team, who is excited about it. I do think it's hard to get somebody really fluent in it if they're not excited or don't want to take the time. That's definitely been a hurdle for me, you know, in advising
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, you have to get excited. You have to find somebody who's excited about like learning about the customers
Right.
versus just showcasing the product or the service, but was like really into the customers. And I think, a lot of funders, they won't really talk to you until you're like really excited about the customers.
Right. At this point in the startup world and the tech world, that's so ubiquitous. But I do think a lot of, you know, solopreneurs and entrepreneurs are still figuring that out. Like, oh, what is the problem I'm trying to solve for the customer, rather than what is this idea that I want to put out because I understand it or think it's good.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's such a big switch, right, in all of that. And one of the things we focus on as well is kind of like, how do we build like really good experiences. And
Mm,
so one of the new things we've been doing is talking about building, and this is an article we'll actually send out with a video, but we were talking about how to use AI. This is a really good article from Forbes about how to use AI for a 5-star customer experience. So this is like another corporate concept, right? How do you really get a 5-star customer experience? And corporations are really into using AI for this. But what do on the ground? How do look at this, Excel plus Tableau? It's listening to us. Um, thanks, AI. Hi, computers. True stuff right here. There you go.
there we go.
Um, so how do you ever get into customer experience with your small business clients and your startups? Do they ever talk about that? Do you get into that as a growth? experience, or is that like another level?
Yeah, I try to get into it as much as possible, whether it's like a skincare product or a tech product, because at the end of the day, like, people are so aware of what they're looking at and what they're buying and what
Yeah.
they're experiencing. It's just like you're gonna shoot yourself in the foot if you don't think about customer needs. So I that's one of the first things I introduce, and like usually I'm telling people, whether it's a solopreneur or a mid-sized business, like, they need feedback, in whatever way. They need to do feedback. There's lots of cool software that can do these amazing surveys for you. You can do qualitative interviews, whatever you need to do. You've got to get feedback, and it's got to be ongoing. So I'm really excited to get into this AI work, because I think it's a real fast forward, to getting feedback and to really being connective with your customer, because that's the whole goal, right? Not just like in
Yeah.
marketing, but in all organizations. You're trying to connect to people. You're trying to create community, and get people excited about what you're doing. So you have to ask those people what they're excited about and how it connects back to you and what you're doing, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think people don't understand like how AI can really accelerate that, because otherwise you're kind of like talking to people on the phone, you're kind of emailing folks, they may or may not answer. It's kind of
Lot
hard to
of
track
work.
people down
Yeah.
unless you have a tool that's tracking people. And that's why that happens, because it's so hard, right, to do this kind of like, you know, basic, do they like it? Do they not like it? If you don't have the data, if you're not looking at it, if you're not figuring out what's going on, and you're
Hmm.
not really tracking your experiences, it's very hard to understand what's real, right? And you have some way of doing that. And I know it's so hard. I think about it all the time because I'm so in it, right? I'm already part of the industry. But what do you do as an outsider? Like, how do you really get into it? And so some of this, it's interesting because a lot of things we're starting to go into every day, like retail, or really dealing with that. And this article talks a little bit about, um, an interesting thing that 1%, the top 1% of retailers' customers are worth 18 times more than its average customer.
Right, right. Like your super fan.
Your super fans are
Yeah.
worth 18 more times than your average customer. And that's one of the things I think AI is really good at, is identifying like who is the top customer. Who do you focus all your attention on? We have customers that ask us for attention all the time, but it doesn't mean that that is the best use of our time. And in
Mhm.
fact, sometimes the customers who spend want to spend a lot of time with us actually don't produce the least amount of ROI.
Right,
Uh, and the
right.
people who are effective and produce a lot of ROI for us, we have to really like make sure we're balancing out everything for that. And it's really really interesting. And it talks about extreme personalization. So have you had experiences where like after they set up the analytics or the metrics, like the aha moments come, and what are they that come? What are the aha moments that come?
Yeah, I mean, totally. I mean, a lot of times, you know, people are trying to find answers and hoping that doing some research and data analysis will give them those answers, but they're often pretty skeptical, and people have their own assumptions of what people are going to say. And I've just noticed that in business in general, people have their own ideas about what's right and wrong, and the ones who are willing to do the research are pretty excited when they get clear answers. When you get data on something and the numbers come back so that most people are saying one thing. It's really exciting because it tells you that you're connecting with people on a certain level that's authentic, and like that, that connective aspect is so direct. So I think people get really excited about them, and it motivates them to move forward. And it takes some confusion out of their heads about what they should be doing and how and who they should be talking to, because the answers are right there in front of them, and they can just move on with that feedback. So I think it's really exciting. And you
Yeah.
can't, I mean, you can question it if you want, but it's not biased like qualitative interviews would be or something like that. Like, it's just telling you the answer.
Right. And I think what's really interesting is, like we're always having a lot of fun when we post on like Facebook, or especially mainly Facebook, when we post on Facebook and we see the algorithm run its course and
Mhm.
we see how many people it reaches at a given time, and then we see kind of the bell curve of it, and then we see the answer within like 24 hours, 24 to
Mhm.
48 hours,
Mhm.
with particularly with email and Facebook and Twitter. And it's so interesting to then when you have all the answers, when you're like, oh, this is what's going on, and this is where people are at, and this is why, right? And then sometimes, how do you build out different parts of your ecosystem to meet those needs, right? And then you building, like the second point they talk about, trust and loyalty, right?
Mhm.
And that's a lot about when you see people interested in certain things, or you see they're cool with certain things, how do you really build out the right amount of trust and loyalty with what you're doing? Have you seen, well, now tell me a little bit about what you've seen in terms of content with your customers.
Sure. I mean, again, people are, especially younger people, are so savvy with this now. Like, I mean, I think mainly people just want whatever you're saying or doing to really help them. Because number one, they want it to be
Yeah,
effective, and they want, like, that's why everyone loves Amazon, because it's so convenient. Like, it just works. It just gives people what they want. But
yeah,
I
there's a point where you send everything out there, right? And then you get the data back and you're like, oh, this is what they want, this is the one that popped.
Yeah, yeah, and people want different things, and with content, it's like it's so important to be authentic, and I think knowing about your customers can really help that, because you can
Yeah,
still be you, because at the end of the day, like, you don't want to offer anything that's not you, especially with content, because
yeah,
people smell it. I think people can smell inauthentic, behavior, or whatnot, and
yeah.
they respond
Or
better.
it gets too salesy.
Yeah, too salesy, or and it's changing so fast that, like, people get it, like, they no longer want those, like, okay, well, just come on here, and like, these forms and funnels that are so obviously salesy. People they don't like pop-ups anymore. People change really quickly, and they can smell it in the content. They can smell affiliate marketing, like, this article indirectly might benefit this company that we mentioned. So you have to really walk the line there with providing good information, and getting people engaged, but also making sure that, they know you're giving them something.
Yeah, they know you're actually helping them in some kind of way
Yeah,
that's really meaningful.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that has to do with, we talk about like a lot about bots, and we had a couple of people ask us about, oh, when are you guys going to do more chat bots? And I was like, I don't know if people like them,
Right. Yeah.
right? And yeah, I mean, every time I get one, I click it, I turn it off.
Yep.
Um, and sometimes they're useful, especially when people are getting to know things. Every once in a while, I think, oh, it's useful, the bot's there. But a lot of times I'm like, no, I don't like this bot, and
Hmm.
that sort of stuff. But it's interesting that this article talks a little bit about, like, how do you verify fans. So I think, when you think about customer experience and AI and data, it's really important, like you were saying, to really know, like, where is, what will my market accept, right? And what won't they accept? And then, working with experts like Data 360, working with consultants like you to say, hey, let's see what is really true, right? And then building a model around that. That's a lot of what we do in labs, is just verifying and building models. And so tell me a little bit about, like, when you first develop a plan for companies and you say, okay, we're going to you know, get an insight going, right? So they talk about this brand that's using an analytic system to measure guest reviews, right? 7,500 guest reviews. When you say, look, we're going to set up a system, so you start with Excel, and you start with the different things they want to measure. Like, tell us the process you go through to like really build out the system that generates the insights? I know, we're going to talk a little bit more later about Data 360, but just tell us generally, like, how have your experiences been to date with building out systems with customers?
Sure. So I tend to use what I call an agile approach. So every organization is different, every project is different, and I also like to build systems according to who I'm working with, because I think that there's not really a one size fits all model. You can use research and databases and tools, but I think everybody's got a different goal, a different vision, and a different project, and also a different level of capability, right? So I've learned this in my career, to introduce tools that are way beyond the scope and understanding of the project or client isn't efficient at that time, and I'm often working with like, one or two or three time entrepreneurs who are just kind of creating their startup, and maybe haven't really come across these tools before. So I have to make sure that it makes sense for them. So yeah, I usually do start with Excel or Airtable or something like that. And we just kind of talk about what they need and what they want to find out first. I will
Hmm.
start with the goals and the vision. And sometimes we have to figure that out a little bit. Like it's not always fleshed out all the way, or it's not always customer focused. So what I've
Hmm.
learned is that if you don't have that core, of like, what is the problem? How am I going to solve it? What's my value proposition? What makes my offering different than someone else's? Then you're not going to really get anywhere with these systems or analyses that you're setting up. So a lot of my work, honestly, it's just my experience maybe has been going back to the beginning and helping people, solidify the core before they, really go into analysis.
Yeah.
But yeah, it works different ways. Sometimes I set up something simple for them, or we might use a tool that can help them get like a lot more responses quickly, something like that, and just in a way that helps them according to their level of understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. It totally makes sense. And I think, some of these things, like looking at, articles like this in Forbes or, in Business Insider or some of the other groups, and it seems like, oh my God, that's so much work. Really, sometimes just having someone who you can bounce ideas off and really get going is helpful. And that's why we have a partner network to work with consultants like Sarah, is to say, hey, if you want to bounce ideas off someone, it might be worth taking a little extra time and a little extra of your budget just to make sure you really have the right people in place or the right things in place for what you want to do with Data 360 or what you want to do with any other tool that you're using. Because, all the tech companies, we all do different things, but a lot of things are complementary. But like sometimes it's hard to keep track of everything. You just need someone to help you keep it all straight.
Yeah, it's very hard to go it alone. Even if you have a co-founder or an assistant or anything, it's always helpful to have an outside perspective to help you. It's just easier as an outsider to see, like, okay, what's working, what's not working. This makes sense. This doesn't make sense. Does it feel authentic? Does it not feel authentic? And how are we really going to build an audience for what you have to offer? It's always nice to have help with that.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, I think someone ran a data report on me because in this website it's talking about Vitamixes, and I happen to own a competitor to Vitamix.
Uh-oh.
And I'm like, whoa, that's some very deep research. So they went all the way back in my profile somewhere. I'm feeling it. And found out, I'm like, Vitamix rewards. I have the other machine.
Oh wow, look, you got a big one.
It's look at that. They're trying to get me to convert. It's very interesting. I laugh at it. It doesn't alarm me, but I know it's a lot of tracking going on. So this article is actually about the seven fear archetypes, and that's sort of always kind of the elephant in the room, right? It's like getting over the hump. And one of the things Ruth Sokup talks about is um, how these things really hold you back, right? There's seven main archetypes of fear. I always love all these pop-ups. So exciting. Don't use pop-up people. They're super annoying.
People
Okay.
so hate them.
I hate them. So we talk a lot about kind of the different pieces. We've published some blogs and stuff about it. You can always email support at data360.solutions to get more information about some of these past posts we've done. But we talk a little bit about the fears, and we talk about, or she talks about the procrastinator, the rule follower, the people pleaser, right? We'll post these in the feed as well. Um, and all these different places, right? The outcast. So you read through this article. Tell me a little bit about the fear archetype paradigm. I know you say you really enjoyed reading about this and kind of, where does that apply in business and tech? Because I think it's very applicable, but I'd love to hear your take on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I really loved when you shared this article with me because it's such I mean, it's a big part of our lives, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we translate fear, we call it stress, like I'm so stressed, but really that's our whole system is on overdrive. We're constantly in fight or flight, stressed about something, whether it's a deadline or something that's much less importance, like, oh, I'm going to be late to a friend's birthday dinner or something like that. um,
Mm-hmm.
so I mean, it's really, I mean, I think that it's like super great that you bring it up because it's so easy to get caught up in fear when we're starting our own projects and businesses because everything's at stake, right? I mean, we have so much to prove. We're
Mm-hmm.
off on our own. We're putting out our vision out into the world. It's pretty scary. I was definitely scared when I took that step. Like, oh, what am I doing? I'm going to start my own business. I'm terrified. Like, I would like to be a little bit small, work for other people and serve their vision until I realized that I too had something to say. And I'm sure that you all feel that way as well. So it's so important to, I think, understand a little bit more about fear than we typically do. We're usually just like on the fear roller coaster. Sometimes we feel confident and then it plummets. So if we can understand it, then we can know how to manage it and work with it. And I think these archetypes are really interesting. And I really hadn't seen this before of how it breaks down different people into distinct categories. And I feel like I definitely related to more than one of these, and probably other people will too, but I've seen it totally in entrepreneurs and founders and CEOs. Everybody has a different version. Um, but yeah, I've seen the self doubter. I thought was really interesting.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of
Uh,
the imposter syndrome thing that people talk about now.
yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty prevalent, right? Like doubt is such a, and it's also part of the artist struggle, right? Like you create
Yeah, yeah, for
something and
sure.
then you're wondering if anyone's going to look at it or anyone cares, and it's really not even about other people. It's just about, like, does what I'm doing have value? Is it even important? And I think in a lot of entrepreneurs, they'll put their thing out there and then they'll recoil, and self.
Yeah, yeah.
And even I've seen, like, they'll embrace a new idea or way of doing things, or like read about a really cool, new, technology or something, and they'll want to try it. But then when they start to get into it, they go back into their old mode where they don't know how it
Yeah.
works. They want to control it. They want to control the whole project because they don't
Yep.
understand it. I think self-doubt is a big part of that, and it can definitely lead to self-sabotage. I mean, I think most of these
Yeah.
things can lead to self-sabotage.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's definitely that, yeah, that recoil. I always call it the boomerang effect,
Yeah.
where they go like, oh yeah, I want to do that new thing, and then they're like, oh my God, I hate new things, and then they
Right.
just start freaking out, and you're like, wait, but you ordered the new thing.
Right. Right. Because if it's a mystery, it might
Yeah,
be anything, or especially if you spend money on it. Oh, I'm hiring this person to set this thing up for me. What if they're not going to do it? You know? And
yeah, and it's just a projection. Like you haven't even let the process unfold. I mean, it's funny. We see a lot of different things. Sometimes we'll see customers like create fake emergencies because they're uncomfortable. Like they'll even say something's happening that's totally not happening. Like
Yeah.
they'll say their website's not working and then it's working. Just to because they're having like internal emotional struggles, or they want to get an answer in the question. It's funny because, a lot of times people don't realize, like, oh, there's other people that have questions too. And there's things like, you don't create a fake emergency because that's just going to delay everything. And then they go, why is everything delayed? After they create the emergency, and you're like, hey, you're sabotaging yourself. Like, what's going on? And
Yeah.
you just have to point out, like, all this stuff. And then, we've literally had people we'll just like send out a factual conversation. Like, hey, we didn't get this from you for a week, so we need this from you now. You're mean. It's really funny, but it's like, hey, guy, you're like doing this weird stuff. Like, we're just trying to get the answer from you. Can you just answer us?
Right.
And it's really interesting, and then sometimes, people are fighting themselves, right? And then they're trying to kind of bring it over to us, and it's so interesting to watch. And we think a lot about how to help people get over the hump of trying something new and not delaying or sabotaging the process, or trying to do all these things that don't help them or delay us in getting them the help.
Yeah.
Have you seen a lot of that? Like, what do you think, you know, people can become aware of to help themselves, like, get where they're going
That's a
when
really
it comes to fair?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I think a couple of different things could be helpful. First of all, a roadmap, I mean, this doesn't always even do the trick, you tell people what you're doing as best you can, and you explain where it's going to go and how it's going to benefit them as best you can, even if the results
Mm-hmm.
are surprising. I think like the more it's like owning the frame in a sense, right? Like if you prepare the space for people to enter, then they're going to feel more comfortable going along this path that's they're basically in the dark. So having that plan is one. I think also what I would probably like, I'm still learning to do this, honestly, and it's a little bit funny, and I think it comes up as a woman consultant too, because
Mm-hmm.
people say, oh, it's just business, there's nothing emotional. But the thing is, there's so much emotion in every project, in every aspect of business. People are constantly coming in and bringing all their fears and doubts and highs and lows. So
Mm-hmm.
I meditate every day. That helps me keep down the emotions and maintain neutrality, because at the end of the day, I love my work and it's very important, but it's not my life. And so I try to
Right.
help people just by being who I am. Like I try to kind of spread that attitude of like, we're here to do something, we're here to make it work, it's going to work. And we all need to trust, in that. We all need to work on
Yeah.
our trust and keep our communication open,
Right.
and bring it down to a calm space where we're not just, reacting. So that's a
Right.
difficult one. I'm definitely still working on that, but I think it's super important. One thing I do is when I'm doing a meeting or a call, if the client's open to it, I try to do a little check-in, just like, how are you doing today? Because
Mm-hmm.
well, actually, like, oh my God, I had to take my 3 kids to school, and then there was like an hour of traffic, and I ran out of gas. Like, you never know how somebody's day is going to go. And if all that stuff
Mm-hmm.
happens to that person, chances are their whole day is going to be derailed. And you want to know what's going on with them. Otherwise, how are you supposed to be successful in that meeting with that project?
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of times, making sure there's a check-in, or you have some support. Sometimes when you're dealing with a tech company, we can't always do that for you. And most of the time we can't, right? And so, it's good to have a consultant, or have a team member, or have a family member, or somebody you can kind of like bounce off it that way, right? And get some clarity around the specific things that you're feeling, or the things you have. And even though at times that costs money, it's worth it, because you have a way to make ensure it's going to move forward, and you have some party that's really going to help you stay objective, like you said, stay neutral, right? And if you don't have that, then meditation's great too. um, if you don't
Yeah.
have the money to do that or whatever, meditation's great. And then you can look for different support resources. We always point our customers to a lot of different communities to do that, and that helps deliver a lot of this. I mean, we just recently launched a partnership with FreshBooks, What was great is everybody, they just had a room full of, 100, 200 entrepreneurs. I think it was close to a couple hundred, and they were like everybody was kind of going through the same things, different versions of the same things. And the funniest thing we found is one local entrepreneur. They are, let's see, out of all the fears, so they make custom kind of Asian style wallets. And it
Hmm.
sounds so weird, but they are definitely the procrastinators and I'll tell you why, is because it took them 16 years, 1 6,
Wow.
to feel like, yeah, I was like, that's hardcore.
Mhm.
1 6, 16 years to leave their 200, not even 200 square feet office in the back of their store and get a
Wow.
real office
Wow.
because they wanted to perfect how their store was run and what products they had in it.
Hmm.
And
Right.
they did not leave a 200 square foot space.
Wow.
If that, maybe it was 50. It was the back of a small store in the arts district in LA. And they
Wow.
didn't leave for 16 years.
Hmm.
In tech, that's like 20 companies. I'm like, I don't even understand that time frame. But I was just in shock because I was like, man, that's hardcore. That is like the ultimate perfectionist procrastinator archetype if I've ever seen one. And they just like this husband and wife, that's what they did. And they have beautiful things.
Hmm.
Some of the most beautiful things in the whole city. But I was like, that is maybe a little too hardcore.
Right. And growth, that's, leaving that space would have been a form of growth for them, but that's
Yeah.
really scary to leave that store behind. And I see that so much with small businesses when they have one product or one thing that they do and they're trying to grow. And, maybe I help introduce the idea of setting up some strategic partnerships where they
Yeah.
could new audiences or try a new product that's close to what they used to do, but it can get them out there into a different space. And it can be really scary for people because they know the familiar, right? And that's
Yeah.
what we like. It's like, okay, I know how to do this. Let me stay here. This has been working for me. But we can't grow as people if we, stay small like that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a great way to cap off this conversation. I appreciate you so much, and really, really thank you for everything. Let me see here. I'm gonna figure out how to end this recording. But anything you want to say in closing before we end to cap off your wisdom for the crowd?
Oh, so sweet. Well, it's been really great to be here. And, Marie is such a force and so intelligent. And, I've already learned so much just by kind of being onboarded to this community. And I just want to say I'm really excited to be involved in whatever way as soon as I heard about Data 360. And this isn't a pitch. I was just like, okay, I want to be here. I want to be understanding this because I think this offering that Marie has helped create is something that is unique in the world and has the potential to really help entrepreneurs and really help lead people from an authentic heart place. So I'm happy to be
Yeah.
here and I'm grateful to have this conversation. I love this conversation. I love the ones we've had and I look forward to having more.
Yes, awesome. We really deeply appreciate you being with us and really advocating for the community and helping us grow the community. Everybody, we're gonna sort of pop off here in a minute, and thank you for joining us for this conversation. And then if you have any questions or need anything, you know the address, support at data360.solutions, and see you on the other side of the weekend. Happy Labor Day, everybody. Bye bye.
Have a great weekend.
Okay.